all the necessary precautions to avoid contracting and spreading the coronavirus COVID-19 disease, which has now impacted this entire region and, of course, the world. We must do whatever we can to prevent infection and contain the spread of this deadly virus. And so we thank Almighty God that to date there have been no announced infections and no deaths in this our federation. We must all continue to pray for God's blessings and grace upon us. However, we cannot be naive and expect that we will escape what most countries in this world are already facing. The truth is that it is only a matter of time before we are confronted with our own case or cases of COVID-19. That is a truth that we must be ready and prepared to face. In order for us to face the truth, our government must tell us the truth. Our government must be open and it must be transparent. We, the citizens and residents, must be kept informed about what steps our government is taking to protect us and save our lives. Our government must tell us what steps we must take to help protect ourselves and save lives as well. We are all in this together. COVID-19 is an equal opportunity virus. It cares not for our political affiliation or ethnicity. It cares not whether we are rich or poor. It cares not whether we are young or old. It cares not whether we are employed or unemployed. It cares not whether we are in government or whether we are in opposition. That is why I have pleaded with the government to put together a national task force comprising representatives of all stakeholders in the society in order to address this international pandemic. But instead, the government has chosen to go it alone, preferring instead merely to consult with stakeholders of its choosing. And in the process, the government has excluded the opposition party in this country, the opposition party which represents a significant and sizable portion of the population affected by this pandemic. And that is why I will continue to address this nation separately and ensure that the views and the ideas of our party on this pandemic are well known to all. At this point, I would also like to thank the public for expressing themselves so freely on social media and in other public forums. They have forced the Prime Minister to attempt to reply to their concerns and conceal the callous insensitivity that was so apparent in his address on Sunday night. Our people have demonstrated their power through social media, and they should continue doing so. The public health crisis caused by this pandemic is unfolding around us with tremendous speed. In the last few days, for example, a number of our sister islands have now confirmed a number of COVID-19 cases. Dominica, it has 7 cases. St. Lucia, it now has 3 cases. Antigua and Barbuda, 3. Trinidad and Tobago, 53 cases. Barbados, 17 cases. United States Virgin Islands, 17 cases as well. St. Martin, just next door, 8 cases. Grenada, 1 case. Montserrat, 1. St. Vincent and the Grenadines, 1. We have all heard and read about the huge number of confirmed cases as well as deaths in some of the countries in which we have relatives and our own friends. The United States of America, the United Kingdom, Canada, the Dominican Republic, just to name a few. These figures are mind-boggling. The steps being taken to control and stop the spread of the virus are also ever-changing and becoming more and more urgent and drastic. Just within the last 72 hours, the government of St. Lucia declared a state of national emergency in that country. In Dominica, the government has ordered the closure of all nightclubs and sporting facilities. Public gatherings above 10 persons have been suspended. So too has in-person access to non-essential public services. Trinidad and Tobago is under lockdown as I speak. That lockdown has resulted in citizens of that country, Trinidad and Tobago, being quarantined in Barbados because the government would not allow them to land in Trinidad. The United Kingdom, Italy, France are also under lockdown. We have all been hearing about what has been happening in the United States as well as in Canada. Right here in St. Kitts-Nevis, the adverse consequences of this pandemic are being felt, even while our government remains silent and missing in action. The tourism industry has been shut down. Cruise ships have disappeared from our shores, and those of our citizens who relied on that industry for their livelihoods are quickly using up whatever savings they were able to put aside in the past. Airlines are also discontinuing flights into our country, as international airports around the world are shutting down. American Airlines, it has suspended all flights to St. Kitts and Nevis. The hotel sector, therefore, is quickly shutting down, and hoteliers are reducing their operations as their occupancy levels have decreased considerably, if not totally vanished. A huge part of our services sector relied almost exclusively on the tourist industry. With that industry now in virtual collapse, there is much loss of employment and income for those of our people who earn their living from these jobs. Yesterday's address by the Prime Minister was not only late, but woefully inadequate and very disappointing. The information provided for the first time on the number of tests, the results of the test, especially in light of the large number of persons quarantined, raised far more questions than they have answered. The economic stimulus package has been promoted as a $120 million stimulus package, but he has not provided the cost of the various elements of the package. However, on closer scrutiny, it doesn't seem to be adding up to $120 million at all. At first glance, it seems that the government will rely primarily on capital projects to provide growth over the next few months. We must insist, however, on greater transparency and competitiveness in the award of contracts if most of this money is to benefit our people and not end up in the pockets of a favored few. Our people must resort to social media to report wrongdoing wherever they see it happening. This is our country, and if a vast amount of our tax dollars is continually siphoned off, our people will suffer the consequences. In virtually every country of the world, they have recognized that there is a huge risk that many businesses will go under. Hence, much of the support has been directed to assisting the private sector as a whole, and small businesses in particular. In the package announced by the Prime Minister, there is no such support for our businesses sector. The so-called package for $120 million, it contains only peanuts for those of our businesses that are most at risk. This will have disastrous consequences on our people. The reduction of corporation tax and unincorporated business tax for 3 months will not yield any relief, simply because over that period, most of our businesses are likely to incur losses and would not have any income on which to pay tax. The postponement of property taxes until September would only delay the burden on our people with property. After September, when hopefully people are trying to recover from this global impact and crisis, they will be faced with accumulated property taxes, not a total forgiveness of these taxes. The government is granting a waiver for water bills, which are usually a very small percentage of household expenditure, but only a moratorium for electricity. It means that the burden is being deferred and, in fact, not reduced. So, of course, our people will still have to pay the accumulated arrears after the end of the moratorium. What help is that, really? Similarly, the moratorium in respect of the Development Bank and the NHC should be structured such that the borrowers will not be called upon to make increased payments at the end of the moratorium. This can be achieved by either, firstly, an extension on the term or of the term of the loan, or a waiver of such obligations over the specified period. The government will actually reward corporations that lay off as much as 25% of their workforce by reducing their corporation tax. I want to make the point that this suggests that the government actually condones the layoff of 25% of our workers. It is a clear signal of what the government finds acceptable, but that is not acceptable to us. Most of our hotels and tourism-related enterprises have already laid off hundreds of workers, and if every other corporation in our federation, whether they are directly affected by the coronavirus or not, lays off 25% of their workforce, the effect on our economy would be most catastrophic. The aim of the government should be to keep all of our workers employed through payroll support or through programs like our most impactful short-term work experience programs. Unfortunately, there is no such initiative in this package for our people. For a worker to get financial support, it would appear he must contract the coronavirus disease. It is also vital that these assistance programs for workers are administered in a structured and programmatic way to ensure maximum efficiency and avoid discrimination and victimization. And so, my fellow citizens and nationals, this is a national crisis of immense proportions. It requires an equally robust and aggressive response to overcome the public health crisis and at the same time militate against the economic decline which accompanies it. It requires bold, imaginative, and collective leadership. Sadly, this leadership has not been forthcoming at all. Sadly, there has been more concern for public relations and political posturing than a most sincere and diligent approach to crisis planning and crisis management. The time has now come for more decisive leadership. We cannot and should not wait for the announcement of confirmed cases or even deaths for us to take the steps which every other country is already taking to ensure that we put ourselves at the front of the line in bending the curve of COVID-19 and ensuring the integrity and sustainability of our health system, as well as protect the lives of our doctors, nurses, our health providers, and all other first responders who are at the forefront of fighting this pandemic. And so there are steps which we can and should take now. And looking at these steps, let me first look at the concept and practice of social distancing. There is a need for the authorities to establish the importance of and firmly enforce public adherence to clear rules for social distancing in our schools, in institutions and workplaces, in order to prevent any ad hoc, misguided responses that may not work in the public's interest. This is the stage at which we need to ascertain, through an expansive testing drive, whether the virus is already among us here in St. Kitts and Nevis. We need to ensure that all persons who arrive at our borders, especially those who are coming from high-risk countries, are in fact tested in order to confirm their status as a starting point to detect, to trace, to manage, and to contain the virus. And that is why there is a dire need for greater transparency in the release of information pertaining to the number of persons who have been quarantined and tested, and what the results have actually been. As has been advised by our leading health institutions, such as the World Health Organization, the key to containing the virus at this stage is to test, and test again. This is the only way to arrive at an accurate assessment of the situation here on the ground in St. Kitts and Nevis. As well, I repeat my call for the government to absorb the cost of testing as part of its own national emergency response and budget to ensure that maximum participation in this effort. Financial considerations must never trump our public health imperatives. Again, looking at the steps that we must look at now, let us look at the economic stimulus package. There is an urgent need for an economic stimulus package to assist workers as well as employers and businesses in these very difficult and trying times. And so today, we propose the following immediate initiatives in this regard. 1, introduction of and payment of unemployment benefits to all persons who have lost their employment as a result of this pandemic. These payments should begin immediately, made retroactive, and should last for the entire duration of the pandemic. The entire duration of the pandemic. 2, provision of direct payroll support to all tourist-related businesses, including hoteliers, restaurants, bars, and the travel agents, to encourage them to keep our people employed. 3, provision of direct income support to taxi drivers, to public transportation buses, to tourist vendors and other hospitality industry-based businesses to ensure that they can meet their business-related expenses during this period of crisis and to beyond. 4, I should say. Suspend payment of a VAT, that is the value-added tax, corporation income tax, and unincorporated business taxes by all businesses for the period. 5, reduce the cost of electricity by 50%. This is reasonable. This is practical. For the months of March, April, and May, in the first instance, for all our consumers. And 6, provide a moratorium on principal and interest payments to customers of the St. Kitts-Nevis and Guyana National Bank and the Development Bank for at least the next 3 months in the first instance. Negotiate also a similar arrangement with all other financial institutions in our country. The loss of jobs, I emphasize, in the tourism sector, and the drastic slowdown in the service industry business, and the cessation of international carrier traffic, among other effects, has the potential to deal a most severe blow to our economic survivability. And so the next-gen SKN Labour Party has therefore taken a policy decision to immediately appoint from its ranks, and also from amongst experts from the financial and economic fraternity, a special counsel to advise the new Labour administration with respect to an economic stimulus program to jumpstart the economy at the beginning of our new term in office. The council will consist of professionals with expertise in specific areas such as finance, economics, health, tourism, and of course, manufacturing. I'm very pleased to learn that our government has reached out to friends in the international community, such as the Republic of China on Taiwan, ROC, Cuba, and the Organization of Eastern Caribbean States, for technical, personnel, supplies, and material support. I would like to thank Dr. Terence Joe, the St. Kitts-Nevis Labour Party's candidate for constituency number 8, for strongly advocating that this step be taken as part of our national preparations and response. My dear fellow citizens, it is my hope that moving forward, our national response will be a proactive response, one that puts our people above politics in order to make a reality of independent proposals and non-government organizations to enlist in this cause by providing community-based responses that would reach out to the most vulnerable in our society. I not only call on those I just mentioned, but must include the faith-based organizations as well, because we need for them to reach out to our most vulnerable in our society, our single mothers, our homeless, and those suffering various forms of domestic abuse. I continue, therefore, to challenge each of us to do our part in observing the guidelines for personal hygiene in order to break the chain of any potential transmission to others here in St. Kitts and Nevis. We welcome, of course, the steps that are now being taken to protect our elderly who are in public and private nursing homes. However, more can be done to train, more can be done to sensitize those heads of households who are the primary caregivers for their sick and elderly. And so finally, the St. Kitts-Nevis Labour Party, it will continue its public outreach actions and activities on a constituency by constituency basis over the coming weeks. And so we look forward to engage you once again in the very near future. God bless you. God protect you. God give us his grace. Thank you.